What up, people? This is Gerald. It is January 10th, 2013. Wow. I'm still getting used to uh, saying that year. Um, I hope everybody had a blessed New Year's. I hope it was fun, safe. You was able to bring the year in as basically as you envisioned it to be. But I also hope that as you were closing out 2012, you did take this time to reflect on that entire year, or just basically reflect that where you are now. Uh, I wanted to put a video out today, and I'm still pondering on what I'm going to title it. I have been very, very fortunate that many people have chosen to confide in me for advice, and I hope that everything that is divinely planned, uh, they'll actually implement. Now, I'm still in awe that it is January. Uh, there is, as many of you know, uh, a bad flu strain going on right now, and a lot of people are getting sick, and it's causing a disturbance everywhere. And I found myself very, very much in thought on what's going on. Never to overthink, but just to stay vigilant in my surroundings. And I had a conversation with someone last night, and I don't understand how we got there, but uh, where I work at, I work outside, so uh, the sun was setting, always leaves a beautiful, beautiful display in the clouds. And as the clouds were breaking and the sun was setting, one of my dear friends came to me with a I want to say I don't want to claim it as a burden because I don't claim burdens, but he was somewhat in distress, and I felt his energy, and I asked him what was going on, and he said, "Well, I've been taking your advice, and I've been really allowing myself to reflect on my life, and which is good because it prevents stagnation. It also keeps you vigilant on what you aspire to accomplish. It may take you a little bit, but progress is progress. You know, I think it was Rihanna that said, it doesn't matter where you came from, but where you end. Um, but it also depends on what was the motivation of that direction. So we can't lose sight of that. So we got to talking, and just right out the blue, he was like, I've been trying to deal with my fears, and I keep finding myself back on this treadmill of thought, and I didn't understand at first, and then it came out, and he was said, I've tried to live a good life, but one of my fears is I'm afraid of being alone. So I asked, what made him think that? Where did that come from? What was, I wanted to see if he was going to be open enough to let me know, or where I could see the trigger that was first planted in his mind, that seed. And I asked him, I said, well, looking back in your life, do you have abandonment issues? A lot of people think that, hold on. A lot of people think that because you express yourself, and what is conveyed, that may be an interpretation of weakness, but it is far from that. Far from that. Because you're at least at a point of reflection to see where this impact was first placed in your mind. You know, what was the linchpin, so to speak, that causes you to react to your emotions. And you know, he basically told me in a general sense that, well, no, I I work hard. I strive to live a good life. However, you know, what's the point on accomplishing all my goals and I have no one to share it with? So I thought about it for a second, and it told me right then and there that somewhere along his journey, someone or something was taken away. Something that was of significance. So I looked at him and I told him, I said, listen, what is happening is you're being transformed, man. You're doing the work. And with that being said, you're starting to do self-thought, and you're looking and you're turning that's what, one of my mantras has always been to turn every stone in your life. Because when you turn every stone in your life, you will never have regret, even if you have to leave a situation or change a situation, because it came from an authentic place. And he started telling me, he was like, well, you know, I've accumulated where I want to be, and that's fine, but I still have something missing. So I went there and I said, well, what is your relationship with your inner self? I didn't want to turn around and make that a spiritual conversation, because some people, you know, will turn around and really run from that, because you run from the things that you don't understand, or more or less you take a bias because your interpretation may not be of the person that you're talking to, and all that does is yield a judging position. And that's one thing I've always, even more so now, come to learn. People are going to have setbacks and challenges, disappointments, but the one common denominator with that is you're alive. You exist. You have to define your purpose. And when you define your purpose, you should have direction. Now, that may cause you to have to redefine some things. But if that work is needed, or if you find yourself coming back to familiar territory, maybe there was a reason that you didn't get the first time. But it's okay. See, I've come to learn with myself, with my journey, that no one can beat you up or criticize you more than you. You define your expectations. You define your personal boundaries. No one can do that but you. If you're in a situation where you feel that you are not being heard, or you're being taken advantage of emotionally, then you need to look at your boundaries. because you define your self-worth. Now, with that being said, let's talk about that beautiful word called love. Love. See, until you love yourself, your reality will not love you back because it won't be authentic. This is something that everyone has the power to yield. But if you find yourself on that treadmill, constantly going through the same situations, but the scenery is changing, it's not the scenery that's changing, it's you. It's you. So, getting back to my friend, I mean, he was contemplating, like, well, maybe I should just pack up and just leave, start anew. And I asked him, I said, well, if you opt to do that, which is your call, it is your life, and you end up wherever you end up, it is not until you look within before that you'll get a different outlook. Because you could turn around and move to Botswana if that was the case, but emotionally you'll still be in the same position there where you were before you left. And see, we have the power of that, y'all. We have that power. You have a right to be happy. No one can make you feel that way. Just like no one can make you do anything you don't want to do. That's why you have the power of free will. You have the power of choice. But you also have to be able to accept what those choices render. And a lot of people end up finding disappointment because they've invested in a belief system thinking that, hey, if I can do this with a change of that, it will render this. No. All it does is show that you're more vulnerable, and also it also shows that you need to put a little bit more effort in you. I highly recommend with everybody, invest in yourself first. That does not mean be selfish. No. It means being able to really do the work. You can't make excuses all your life thinking that, well, I got a bad hand that was dealt and this is all I'm going to be. Well, that might be the case if you settle, if you claim it. How many times have you seen situations where people have had a very, very hard start? Things with the kitchen sink thrown at them. But they took that as a motivation and they dug within themselves, which means you have to be authentic, and found out what made them happy. They had to authenticate who they are. A lot of people are walking around and don't have a clue who they are. Don't. But they allow their circumstances or their reality to define them. You define that. If a person claims you to be selfish and you know you're not, then why give the actions to validate that claim? The reason why people do that is because they're afraid of themselves. That word, fear. Your strength is on the other side of it. But not until you go through that challenge, that obstacle. And that's where your insight and your wisdom comes from. You can't run all your life. You know what happens to people that run all their life, that always makes excuses for the things they didn't do? They end up by themselves, alone and bitter. It's sad. They settle into, well, that's just the way it is, and it wasn't meant. But even if it wasn't meant for you to have someone in your life, you still can choose to be happy. Mhm. Yeah. But your life is not going to flow until you know who you are. You know, um, Diana Ross had this movie out. It's a classic. If you get a chance, highly recommend that you check it out. It's called Mahogany. And I'm not going to tell you about it, but it basically goes from one person's life, from one aspect to the next, and how people interact. But she had a song that was the theme. And not to butcher it, but it basically in a nutshell said, do you know, or do you know the things that life is going to show you? Do you know? Well, that's what life is. Life is supposed to be about embracing your experiences, good or bad, learning from your experiences. But it should be for the greater good. It should be. So I told him, I said, whatever has got your mind to a point where you feel like you've given up, don't give up. Don't claim that, but give it to your higher power. Ask for that strength. Ask Him to give you comfort when there is discomfort. Because we are here to give love. That's our main purpose. And when we give love and it's authentic, it should come back. But if it's not authentic, it's never appreciated. And you never get what you deserve. But you got to start loving yourself first. You got to start seeing the worth and value who you are. You got to. So just to sum this up real quick, I hope that you guys took that time over the holidays to write down your 5 fears. Now, if you've done that, take one of those fears and write 5 things on why you are afraid of it. Then after that, write 3 things on what you can do to change that. And then after that, write this. Why didn't I do it? Because that's where your empowerment is. God loves you. I'm praying for you. Be blessed.